Over to you.
Thank you, Nitin. And thank you, everyone, for joining us here. And welcome again. So, now it's my privilege to introduce you to our both eminent speakers for this scientific evening. This scientific evening session, we have kept the objective of the session is to tell you more about how the drugs can be repurposed for the uses in COVID-19 patients. For that, we have first guest of the evening. We have Dr. Ravi Ashok Doshi sir. Dr. Doshi sir is professor and HOD in the Department of Respiratory Disease at Shri Aurobindo Medical College and Postgraduate Institute, Indore. He is also the in charge of COVID hospital at Shri Aurobindo Medical College, where he has treated more than 4,500 COVID-19 patients to till date. He is the first one to use plasma therapy in Madhya Pradesh. He is also the convener of state level committee for formation of COVID-19 guidelines. Over the years, he has won many accolades and many awards, and he has more than 20 papers to his name, publications to his name in various national and international journals. He has been working without a single break since 15th of March 2020. Welcome, sir. Now, let me introduce with our second guest of this evening, Professor Dr. Jayant Panda, sir, who is again Professor and HOD at PG Department of Medicine at SCB Medical College, Cuttack. He is consultant in diabetes, metabolic and critical care medicine and serving Odisha Medical Education Services since 23 years. Fellow of Indian and American College of Physicians, IMMS, RSDI and Diabetes India Member Faculty Council. He has achieved many accolades and many awards such as Young Achievers Awards in NCCD 2018 Kolkata, API Boehringer Knoll Junior Lectureship Diabetes Award 2019, and very recently KG Naya Oration at Virtual BPCon 2020 at Lucknow. He is an active member of API, RSDI, RCM, and various other national and international organizations. He has received special training in diabetes by Johns Hopkins University, Steno, and Joslin Diabetes Centers. He has more than 71 national and international publications in peer-reviewed journals to his name. He has contributed chapters in textbooks, updates, and edited monograms and journals also. He is also the editor of Odisha Physicians Journal and Odisha Medical Journal, and also the member of editorial board of JAPI, IJDDC, and JIMA. He has been principal investigator of many international and national trials and the organizing secretary for 45th RSGI 2017 Bhubaneswar. And both of these our speakers, they have been working towards COVID-19 patient care vigorously since the start of this pandemic in India. So welcome Jan Panda sir, welcome Dr. Ravi Doshi sir.
Thank you so much.
Sir, as we are already aware that we are going through this pandemic situation, and where we do not have any confirmed treatment for this disease, so the repurposing the drugs may be the mainstay of the therapy right now. So before I start in a particular therapy-wise discussion, we would like to hear from both of you, sir. What is your experience?
Can you come again?
Pardon, sir? Okay. Sir, I was asking, sir, may I ask you, let me start with Dr. Jayant Panda, sir, first. So what is your experience overall in COVID-19 patient treatment overall, sir?
Thank you, Dr. Prashant. What's my experience? It's the world's experience. The virus is new, and the day we knew that we are vulnerable to the virus, and it's a zoonosis coming from Wuhan, China, and the number of cases reported with various features of respiratory and non-respiratory organ involvement, there was a desperate attempt to find out drugs which can control the infection. I remember particularly in March, which you have told, we first started with hydroxychloroquine. And there was proposals because the virus attaches with ACE receptors. There was proposals that hydroxychloroquine can decrease the virus attachment. At the same time, this is anti-inflammatory. And the topic of today, what we have kept, the trinity, the inflammation, the immunity, and the intervention. And most of the damage, say it be thrombosis, say it be multi-organ failure, say it be cytokine storm, it's mediated by the inflammation. We started initially the anti-inflammatories, and hydroxychloroquine came into picture, followed by the azithromycin, followed by the doxycycline, followed by the ivermectin, followed by the lopinavir, ritonavir combination, and one after another we found the repurposed or the off-label drugs which were extrapolated for treatment of the condition. And even the trials, say it be convalescent plasma therapy, say it be vaccine, say it be antivirals, say it be any interventional mode, all were expedited because we had no time to spend more time to see the efficacy. So in such a scenario, starting from nutraceuticals, vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc, to the low molecular weight heparin, antivirals, steroid, and the interleukin 6 inhibitors, whatever things are in use at present, we don't have a conclusive proof against any drug, but it's a desperate attempt to help the patients by this. And I'll tell, not that we have not got the result, we have got the result from many of them in some form or other, either for the prophylaxis or for the treatment. Only thing, in the due course, we knew that few are more effective, few are less effective, few are of doubtful efficacy, and we are finding more and more agents to work. But the most important message goes that the attempt to fight with the virus with whatever available weapons is at its peak for last 8-9 months, and the fight is on. And if you see the present interventions, starting from nutraceuticals to antivirals, starting from convalescent plasma therapy to the drugs like steroid and low molecular heparin, all are depending on a indication basis, and we have certain protocol guideline by Ministry of Health and Family Welfare as per which we are intervening and getting various success.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Now, if I will go to Dr. Ravi Doshi, sir. Sir, what has been your experience? I mean, sir, I know, sir. I mean, you are still, I mean, wearing all those aprons and all, sir. So, how has been your experience in treating COVID-19 patients?
First of all, I would like to thank Mankind Pharma for this opportunity to interact with all of you. See, COVID-19 has been a once in a lifetime opportunity, though it has been very deadly in terms of the loss of human life that it has caused. But at the same time, as a medical practitioner, we have come to see a totally new disease come in front of us, totally new thought process, totally new treatment modalities. So I would say COVID-19, sir has very correctly elaborated all the names of the standard treatments that we have used. There was a time in March and April where every second day treatment used to be changing. What we had to do, what we don't have to do. Today we are doing this. Day before, day after yesterday, we come to know here that was wrong, something else is right. But over a period of time, the Trinity, which is the topic of today's this interview and panel discussion, it has proven that inflammation and these basic immunity related events are the basis of COVID-19 pathology. And if taken care of into account, if you give anti-inflammatory like steroids and if you give anti-inflammatory agents like IL-6 inhibitors, if you give immunity boosters like your micronutrients, steroids, used in proper way, if you use plasma therapy, if you use agents like tocilizumab in a proper way at a proper timing, your severe and moderate COVID patients will recover. But the bulk of the patients which are asymptomatic and mild also need a lot of care. It is not like you can just let them aloof. You have to supplement them with good micronutrients. You have to make sure that they sleep well, because if they don't sleep well, then there is a chance that their immunity can be hampered. So I think these are few points which most of us already knew, but the COVID-19 epidemic has reinforced in our minds. So that is what my experience is.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir. As you both of you have explained beautifully your experience, and definitely this disease has a devastating impacts on the human life. So, sir, to forward on with our session, sir, I just wanted to share one slide set where we have given some points about melatonin, and then one by one I will take your opinion on those points, sir. So, sir, let me just share my screen, sir. Okay, sir, I guess my screen is visible.
Yes.
So, sir, SARS-CoV, this severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus version 2, is it in neural tissues? So, what is the impact on the neural tissues of this coronavirus? So, sir, this is the reference by Dr. Romero AL et al. Coronavirus disease and its neuroinvasive capacity. So, as per this article, the recent detection of SARS-CoV in the CSF and in the frontal lobe in post-mortem examination have actually confirmed the presence of this viral in neural tissues. And therapeutic uses of high doses of melatonin may favorably modulate the immune response and neuroinflammation caused by this virus. So, what is your opinion on this fact, sir?
No, melatonin, definitely there is a neural involvement by the virus, which even we see in clinical practice that a lot of patients are having a lot of neurological manifestations. Not all of them can be called purely vascular manifestations. And yeah, we are using melatonin and we are happy that melatonin is being promoted, because not only does it favor the immune response and neuroinflammation, but it also helps in proper alteration of the day-night cycle to in favor of the patient.
Dr. Jayant Panda, sir?
Yeah, you are right. From the beginning, we have got evidence of CNS and PNS involvement. As Dr. Ravi told, we have seen patients with encephalopathy, we have seen patients with seizure, and we have seen patients with features of peripheral neuropathy also. Now, of late, we got evidence of virus in CSF as well as in frontal lobe. So that makes clear that virus crosses the blood-brain barrier. So it causes pathology in CNS with various manifestations. The second part, melatonin. You know, it's a physiological phenomena that we have adequate melatonin in our pineal glands and also other structures like lungs, like liver, like different structures of the body. And it has been also documented that melatonin is not only a diurnal or day and night hormone, it also has something to do with immunity. And in SARS-CoV-2, we have seen those who are immunocompromised or those who are elderly with comorbidities like diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, kidney disease, asthma, cancer, they're more prone for the infection. So any melatonin deficiency makes the patient prone. And because CNS involvement is there, and primarily we find melatonin in the pineal gland and the central nervous system, correction of the melatonin deficiency may make the patient immunocompetent. That's another hypothesis. And I also support that hypothesis, like we correct many nutrients like vitamin D, like zinc, like C. We can also correct melatonin with the belief that this will decrease the neurological involvement, increase the immunity on the part of the patient, and patient will be able to fight out the virus well.
Thank you, sir. So let me move on to the second aspect of pathophysiology of this neural invasion of SARS-CoV. So a decrease in pineal and systemic melatonin has been an important driver for this SARS-CoV susceptibility, as shared by Dr. Jayant Panda sir. With the loss of pineal melatonin induction of the alpha-7 nicotinic acetylcholine receptor in pulmonary epithelial cell and immune cells being a powerful regulator of susceptibility and severity. So, sir, stress, including this discrimination stress and decreased vitamin D level, which regulates SARS-CoV, including via gut dysbiosis and permeability, is a resultant decrease in the short-chain fatty acid butyrate and increase in circulating lipopolysaccharides. And this stress and cytokine induction of this kynurenine pathway lead to aryl hydrocarbon receptor activation, which increasing platelet activity, coagulation, and thrombin production, leading to thrombin rise underpinning COVID-19 fatalities. So this is again regarding the neural invasion of SARS-CoV via the receptor alpha-7 nicotinic cholinesterase receptor, sir, which is found in the pulmonary epithelium, sir. Sir, any comment from your side? Dr. Doshi, sir?
This, see, the basic, the pathophysiology that you have elaborated, that melatonin, there is loss of pineal melatonin because of stress and low vitamin D levels. This is very, very apt, because in practice, we are also seeing that there are several situations where supplementation with melatonin and vitamin D is vital. And thrombin hypercoagulability is definitely found to be one of the major reasons that we are getting mortality in SARS-CoV-2 severe cases.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Jayant Panda, sir, any comments?
Yeah, rightly you have presented this. I have already told that melatonin deficiency is not only causes the diurnal disturbances, but also makes the patient immunocompromised. And you have delineated the proper cycles through the alpha-7 nicotinic acetylcholine receptor, as well as the different gut dysbiosis and the aryl hydrocarbon receptor activation, which are three key mechanisms just for pulmonary, GI, and thromboembolic complications. We know that majority of the complications takes place in the lungs, maybe viral pneumonia, maybe fibrosis, maybe ARDS. All are mediated through this 7 nicotinic acetylcholine receptor, and it's a regulator of severity and susceptibility to large extent. And in the gut dysbiosis, especially the vitamin D plays a major role. And short chain fatty acid, the butyrate, increasing the circulating lipopolysaccharide, and you get a lot of GI symptoms. We know loose motions are there, we know GI upset is there, and finally thromboembolism is part of complications. We have seen widespread thromboembolism even in post-COVID time, and it's a routine. If we get the evidence of hypoxemia, we have to give oxygen, and along with that the antivirals, steroids, the low molecular weight heparin, and also antibiotics and convalescent plasma if required. So all three mechanisms we have delineated are very important and related to melatonin, I'll say.
Thank you, sir. So, sir, there is one more paper. I mean, especially talking about why the elderly population is at high risk group in coronavirus pandemic, sir. So, according to this paper, sir, higher stress due to social isolation, diminished melatonin level with age, and raised exposure of individual to light at the evening, reducing melatonin and disrupting circadian rhythmicity, are the important factors attributing to vulnerability of COVID-19 infection in elderly. So the chronotherapy restores this optimal circadian pattern of the sleep-wake cycle in elderly, which involves adequate sleep hygiene, timed light exposure, and chronobiotic medications like melatonin. So, sir, according to this paper, as we are already aware, like elderly are at very high risk, and so that might be because of the reduced melatonin levels. Dr. Doshi, sir, your comments, sir?
Yeah, see, again, we all know that the brunt of the mortality in COVID has been by the elderly, we have seen in the elderly population. The stress factors which you have enumerated, like social isolation, not only prior to the isolation in the CCU ward, COVID ward, but per se also social isolation is the very commonly seen as a part of westernization of the society. With age, physiologically melatonin levels deplete in the pineal gland. And as in as nightlife is going on and in elderly, there is poor sleep at night. So the reason is all reduced melatonin levels. Therefore, circadian rhythm is very badly affected. Their sleep-wake cycle is very deeply affected. So we can see that newer theories are coming, more and more papers and work to lack of sleep causing lack of immunity is being linked to melatonin. And definitely the treatment with chronotherapy to restore this circadian sleep wake cycle may help us, in which melatonin, adequate sleep hygiene, time light exposure, and drug therapy with melatonin is of prime importance.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Pandit, sir.
Yes, rightly, and Dr. Ravi has told all these factors, especially in elderly, we see diminished melatonin level, their stress level is very high, and also other factors like the comorbid diseases, like emotional events at the family, like the social, financial issues. They have multiple disturbances which disturbs their awake sleep cycle as well as their body immunity. So chronotherapy, restoring the optimal circadian pattern is very important, which allows them adequate sleep hygiene, the timed light exposure, and the chronobiotic medications. Melatonin, of course, helps them if they don't get it. So the replacement therapy of melatonin, especially in the elderly age group, can be of help in immune rebuilding and allowing them to have a immunocompetent status to fight with the virus.
Thank you, sir. So, sir, it has been noted that therapeutic potential of melatonin is not just as a chronotherapy. It is it works as an antioxidant. It works as an anti-inflammatory, immunomodulatory, and a possible antiviral action also, sir. So, sir, moving forward, now, sir, there is one retrospective study where adjuvant treatment with melatonin for coronavirus disease in pneumonia requiring hospitalization, and it was checked. So, high dose melatonin may be beneficial in patients treating for COVID-19 pneumonia. It was involved in shortening the time to clinical improvement, less need of for mechanical ventilation, shorter hospital stay, possible lower mortality also. So this high dose melatonin was very well tolerated and did not cause any significant side effect except for sleepiness, which was considered favorable by all the patients. And being commonly available and inexpensive supplement worldwide, it may play a role as an adjuvant therapy in COVID-19. Sir, what is your comments on that, sir? The melatonin as an adjuvant therapy in COVID-19. Dr. Doshi, sir.
Melatonin, see, over these past few months, I think many of us have come to realize the importance that melatonin as an adjuvant therapy has. It definitely improves clinical improvement by providing the patient a good sleep pattern. If the patient will sleep adequately at night, his immunity power and the whole, even the morning ABGs are better as well at night. So I think high dose melatonin, when we have used in clinical practice, offers a very good supplement to your standard medication. And I definitely see that in COVID-19, melatonin supplementation is a very positive way forward.
Thank you, sir. Sir, Dr. Panda, sir, your comment.
Yeah, Dr. Ravi is very right. And we know these are the hormones in mild dose or moderate dose that don't have much change or effect, what we have seen. But high dose melatonin is what is advocated. And in a crisis situation like COVID-19, we have to stick to high dose melatonin, which definitely helps as a adjuvant to our patients, decreasing the hospital stay, increasing the probability of recovery, and decreasing the need for the mechanical ventilation, as well as shortening the time for clinical development. So in our practice also, we have seen around a large group of patients, 3,000 to 4,000 patients whom we have used the supplementation against the control, and we have seen positive outcome in the patient who received this adjuvant. So I'll also support the concept that high dose melatonin can be of use in especially patients of immunocompromised state for a earlier recovery and for a complication-free recovery.
Thank you, sir. And sir, there are evidences which suggest that melatonin, because of the SARS-CoV-induced endothelial dysfunction and cardiovascular injury, are because they are also probably initiated by increase in phosphorylation levels of JAK2 and STAT pathway, which resulting reactive oxygen species formation. And again, these pathological alterations are speculated to be strikingly reversed by the melatonin. And sir, there was one more paper which was published earlier, sir. It is basically role of melatonin in Ebola, and where melatonin could attenuate the severity of viral infections generally and Ebola infection specifically. It could prevent one of the major complications of Ebola infection, that is hemorrhagic shock syndrome, which contributes definitely to high mortality rate. And given the high safety profile of melatonin, easy production, inexpensive, and fact that it can be self-administered, of course, as a tablet formation, is an attractive potential treatment for Ebola. So, sir, that was for Ebola virus pathology as such, just to showcase you the evidences about this melatonin. Now, sir, this is one paper which was published recently, which shows the therapeutic algorithm, how to use this melatonin in COVID-19 patients. And according to this paper, the suggested dose is 3 mg to a maximum of 10 mg, 60 to 30 minutes before bedtime. Sir, your comments, sir, on the dosing pattern and the dose and the duration. Dr. Doshi, sir, please, if I may ask.
What we are means the standard of therapy in melatonin in COVID is basically covering the mouth and nose, avoiding close contact with those who avoid traveling to affected cities and areas. These are the standard things, but melatonin use up to 10 milligram. Before at bedtime, we have seen really good results in the terms that patients will comply well. They are much more fresh in the morning, and we are talking about severe cases also, not
Yes,
only
sir.
our routine mild to moderate cases. So, in these patients, usually you don't find patients who are so comfortable. So that is a very good use. So definitely, I am sure sir will also agree that supplementing melatonin in these patients has definitely given a positive outcome. And like you told, these studies in Ebola, even remdesivir has come from Ebola. So lot of things that we have gained knowledge from Ebola are very proving to be very useful in this dreaded COVID-19 epidemic.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Pandit, sir.
Rightly shared, Professor Rabi. Swine flu, then Ebola, then COVID has made us more experienced. And say it be convalescent plasma therapy, say it be remdesivir, say it be melatonin, all the knowledge, all the ideas are borrowed from the previous pandemic. And in elderly, we have to go a little slow. We don't cross usually 10 milligram melatonin, and minimum being the 3 milligram, and shame 1 hour before. And those who are healthcare personnel and elderly people, those who are relative younger age group, in them we can go a little higher, and the dose recommended is 40 milligram per day, 1 hour before bedtime. This is the right time because the circadian rhythm is important. So we have to remember the dose difference, 3 to 10 milligram in elderly, and up to 40 milligram in the young and people at risk. 1 hour before bedtime is important. We have used that in earlier also, though it's not a very life-saving drug or first-line drug. It's as a adjuvant. It has helped us, and I'm sure with this rationality, we can take up this molecule in people who are at moderate disease, at least. Mild disease we may not give, but moderate disease we must give so that they don't go to the severe state.
Thank you, sir. So, sir, there was for the patients, I mean, who are admitted to hospital with symptoms suggestive of COVID-19, according to this trial, of course, they have utilized the very high dose of melatonin. So, just to showcase how safe this therapy is, even they like utilized melatonin for even 400 milligram BID. So, that is quite a very high dose which they have utilized in COVID-19 infection, sir. Now, sir, melatonin as a potential adjuvant treatment in COVID-19 setup for India, if I talk about, sir, how and where you find its place in COVID-19 patient in prophylaxis or in a treatment or maybe post-COVID also, like post-COVID stress syndrome. So how do you find the role of melatonin in these three situations, sir? So, okay, this time I will go for Dr. Panda, sir.
Rightly, you have told it's a good adjuvant, and it's effective in critical care patients, reducing the vessel permeability, anxiety, sedation use, and improving sleeping quality. We know many people with a disturbed sleep rhythm. We have used melatonin to restore the circadian rhythm, and the clinical outcomes have been influenced favorably by its use. And it has also effect on the virus related complications, like many people who have seen the thromboembolic phenomena, the GI upset, distension, vomiting, loose motions, headache, myalgia, as well as depression, encephalopathy, confusion. All these patients, they have improved, and especially people with CNS features, those who have irritability, depression, confusion, mental confusion, and at times
Okay, I feel Dr. Jayant Panda sir's video has stuck. So, yeah.
That experience we can share, giving benefit to other patients.
Thank you, sir. Now, Dr. Doshi, sir, your comments on use of melatonin in pre-COVID, COVID, or in post-COVID.
See, definitely, I'll see any drug. Like I'll give a synonym for melatonin. Like levocetirizine is there. Now, levocetirizine is a very good anti-allergic with an additional sedative property. So I would say melatonin is somewhat like a brother, but just reverse. It is a very good sleeping agent with good anti-inflammatory property. So similarly, it is simple to administer, almost negligible side effect profile, and if it has an additional advantage of reducing vessel permeability, then I see a very huge role that melatonin has to play in critical care patients, not only in COVID era, but even post-COVID era, because all this knowledge that we are gaining of the advantage of melatonin, this anxiety reduction, sedative property, improved sleep quality, all these are very vital in most of our ventilator and COPD cases also. So I would say that melatonin has a huge role in this COVID era to play.
Thank you, sir. Sir, now I will just stop sharing and we'll go like in the initially also like we shared the role of nutraceuticals in this COVID-19. So I will go one question, I mean, at a time, sir. So now, okay, I will go for first Dr. Jayant Panda, sir. Sir, why is vitamin C is also considered a potential therapy against SARS-CoV?
Yeah, the vitamins are the vital factors for the body, and it has been proved since long that the antioxidant formulations contain vitamin A, vitamin C, and vitamin E. It's a age-old practice. Almost 20 years before we started using this combination as a scavenging agent, as an antioxidant preparation, and many elderly people, sick patients, and immunocompromised patients benefited out of that. That's because it has many intracellular and the organ level functions. The vitamin C not only affects the functioning of the mitochondria, DNA, RNA, and the different cell components at different organs, starting from the CNS, GI, respiratory, heart, lungs, and the abdominal organs. It has a profound function which helps the immunological based fight against the virus and builds up body's immunity. So it's obvious that we need many vitamin factors for a proper immunity, and C is obviously at the front, because we know in the previous pandemic also, say Asian flu, Spanish flu, we have used simple preparations of vitamin C, chewable tablets, and the suspensions in many patients. And in common cold, taking vitamin C is a very common practice, and it's, I think, rational and evidence based, because for a acute development or a short term development of a good immunity, vitamin C has a definite evidence based role.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Doshi, sir, so what is the optimum dose of vitamin C for prophylaxis and for the therapy part, sir?
Usually, the common doses that we are using, see, dose variation is definitely there in several centers, but some people prefer the routine dose of 500 milligram 8 hourly. Some go to very high doses. They will even give up to 2 grams. Some give injectable to the level of 4.5 grams also, 1.5 gram 8 hourly. So there are several forms. So usually my patients prophylactically, I would prescribe them 500 milligram twice daily. But in severe COVID cases, in parenteral form, I go up to 1.5 gram thrice daily, means around 4 to 4.5 grams also.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Doshi, sir, so my next question is for you, sir. How do you see vitamin D deficiency and its correlation with the COVID-19 patients?
Well, vitamin D plays a very role in the immunity of the body, and patients who are hypovitamintrosis D not only have bone abnormalities, but they also have significant immunological deficiencies. They are known to be predisposed to having more severe pneumonias. So, vitamin D supplementation is a vital part for treatment of patients with severe sepsis. In COVID-19, we see that patients are usually vitamin D deficient whenever they get their workup done. These patients are also like I will just tell it in that way. Before current situation, we have had a good 6 to 7 months of lockdown period when patient is definitely inside the house. There are many people who have not even gone to their balconies, we know about. So that natural source of vitamin D from sunlight, lot of people have derived themselves from that. So vitamin D supplementation, again, I found very important in elderly and even in females.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Jayant Panda, sir. Sir,
Yes.
what is the correct way of taking vitamin D? So I guess you also agree that vitamin D deficiency is there. So what is the correct way? I mean, daily dosing or weekly or monthly? How and for how long a patient can take vitamin D supplementation?
Regarding vitamin D, I'll tell that this is the molecule which is associated with many metabolic derangements and diseases. It's the invention of this century that such a simple supplementation can help us in so many indications. Say it be diabetes, say it be hypertension, say it be metabolic disorders like hypothyroid to gout, say it be infective diseases like pneumonia, say it be vascular diseases like stroke, There is collagen vascular disease like lupus and rheumatoid arthritis. There is no indication left in a portion where the vitamin D doesn't help. Number one. Number two, in India, as Dr. Ravi told, we are most likely deficient in vitamin D because we stay mostly indoor, and genetically our vitamin D level is very low. And during the lockdown time, we have not been exposed adequately to sun. Regarding the doses, suppose you are giving to an acute patient, I'll suggest that at least for 3 consecutive days, the 60,000 microgram of vitamin D should be used, at least for 3 doses. Those who have severe infection, in them we can give up to 10 days of 60,000 microgram. So starting from 3 to 10 days, 60,000 microgram, following which we can give weekly for 3 months, and we can continue monthly, maybe for lifelong, or till the vitamin D3 levels are corrected to adequate level. You know, we keep minimum 30, optimally we keep up to 60, and it can be sufficient only when it's up to 100. More than 100, we are a little cautious, but it's very rare to see more than 100. So acute disease, immediately we have to start. 3 to 10 days we have to continue daily basis, and maybe in patients of convalescence, post-COVID, or patients of contacts at risk, in them we can continue it weekly, or a follow-up we can continue it weekly, and finally shift to a monthly therapy.
Thank you, sir. Sir, although sir, we are generally speaking about talking about COVID-19 as such, but sir, what about in other as such general viral respiratory infections? Can these vitamin C, D can be given, and will it be helpful?
Yes, it's not only in COVID. You know, in previous pandemic also we have used, in Ebola and swine flu also we have used, in common day-to-day infection of influenza and other viral illness also we have supplemented. The immune system uh, deficiency is because of long-term causes and short-term causes. Malnutrition, protein deficiency, as well as the vitamin and mineral deficiency is one of these short-term reason of immunodeficient state. And this use in acute state builds up immunity and helps us to come over the crisis as well. So what I'll supplement in the proper doses, as Dr. Ravi told, 500 milligram minimum 3 times a day vitamin C, 60,000 minimum daily vitamin D, and also the other vitamins and the minerals like zinc, 50 milligram BD, to be supplemented if we want the immune deficiency state to rebuild. If you do a assessment of vitamin D, zinc, vitamin C, it will take a long time and it's expensive as well. If you supplement, if there is a deficit, it will be corrected immediately. If there is no deficit also, there is no harm to the patient. So instead of working them out, you can start supplementing vitamin C, vitamin D and zinc in the proper doses, at least for 10 days, and follow them up in the post-COVID time for their proper immune build-up and fight against the virus.
Thank you, sir. So, sir, you actually come up with a very important point on post-COVID follow-up. So, these vitamin C, D, and zinc, for how long it can be given in a post-COVID patient, sir? Is there any guideline or in your clinical experience?
Yeah, we see post-COVID complications proportionate to their duration of illness. Professor Ravi will agree to me. The infection can be mild, can be moderate, can be severe. We in 80% patients we see mild, very mild infection. 15% moderate who are oxygen requiring but they recover first. 5% become critical, go to shock, ventilator requiring, NIV requiring, fight with life, stay for months together in the ICU. and with a scary, long, scary organ, they get recovered. So more severe is the disease, more severe is the post-COVID state. Suppose somebody has a severe disease, maybe up to 6 months to 1 year, you need to supplement them with these nutritional factors. Somebody has a moderate disease, minimum 3 months will do. Anybody who is having a mild to very mild disease, even 2 weeks supplementation can be adequate. So depending on the severity of the disease, depending on the deficiency, pre-COVID deficiency of the person, we decide the duration of therapy, but optimally 2 to 6 weeks treatment is must with vitamin C, vitamin D, and zinc.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Doshi, sir, my next question to you, sir. So melatonin, although like we have already seen all the evidences about melatonin, but if I ask you, so in post-COVID patients, again the same, so melatonin, what is the advantage of melatonin in post-COVID patient, and for how long it can be used?
See, personally speaking, I have used it for a very, at least 3 to 4 months. I have comfortably given to few of my patients. But I am sure I will be prolonging it for a longer period of time, because most of these patients suffer from something that we can call post-traumatic stress disorder. So they have lot of anxiety. Almost none of them are able to sleep well without any additional drug. So giving melatonin always helps them, because it is one step above your routine sedative drug. So I have several of my patients continuing on melatonin even if they are discharged. I have not seen any significant side effect profile up to now. Rather, I have seen patients who, if they sleep well, in the second or third follow-up visit only after adding melatonin, I stop calling them as patients also. They are not even COVID sequel, they are COVID recovered. And I would attribute a big role to those who sleep well by using melatonin.
So, sir, like you said, sir, for 3 to 4 months, I mean, that was comfortably, it can be used, sir. I mean, definitely depending upon the patient to patient situation. Am I right?
Yes. Yes. And it's not from a theoretical background that I'm giving you my answer. My answer is from a pure practical aspect. Because as far as COVID in theory goes, everything that we are reading now might actually be obsolete 2 months down the line. So practically up till now, given for 3-4 months, no problem.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir. I mean, definitely, sir, that is our objective, all the evidence-based information and, of course, the clinical experience-based information only we want to share with our audience. So thank you, sir. Now, sir, the last comment, if I ask, of course, from Dr. Jayant Panda, sir, about this COVID-19 pandemic, how is the future going on? And any last comments, sir, on for this?
We have taken up very important issues regarding the nutraceuticals, melatonin, and the disease severity in the country. We are fighting hard for last 8-9 months that all are in the fight, and the fight is on, the pandemic is on. As the numbers are receding, as though we are in the winter, we are approaching the next year first, the numbers are receding. Unlike United States, Europe, and many other countries, I don't anticipate that India will have a very worse second wave. My assessment, our immunity, like our African friends and developing world friends, because of the malaria, because of the tuberculosis, because of the many antiviral antibodies, are better than that of the Western counterparts. And in coming months, we'll be able to protect ourselves with that antibody, because our herd immunity reaching almost 50-60% will also protect us. And by that time, the vaccine will be added, which will also protect us. So with herd immunity, with vaccine, with our previous anti-malarial, anti-tubercular antibody, definitely will be able to live comfortably along with the virus in the future days. So end of 2020 should be the end of the virus. And in 2021, the new year, we should be able to begin afresh with new avenues.
Definitely, sir. We also hoping for the same, only. So, Dr. Doshi, sir, any last comment from your side?
No, see, when like I absolutely agree with what Sir told. Let 2020 go, let all the woes go away. Come 2021, we will start afresh. And again, drawing to the Trinity and the topic of this lecture, I seriously feel that we have lost our sleep over this huge anxiety. So the more we concentrate on sleep quality, even if we have to use an additional drug like melatonin, if our patients are sleeping well, I am sure they will be able to overcome the current ongoing fear of COVID and even the anxiety of post-COVID sequelae in a much better and effective way.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for this wonderful session, sir. And I'm sure our audience must have enjoyed this interaction. And definitely they will get, I mean, they must have received various knowledge about the repurposed drugs to be used in COVID and post-COVID also, sir. So thank you very much, sir. Thank you for this session, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr.
Kannan sir.
Prashant. Thank you, Professor Ravi. Take
Thank
care.
you, sir.
Stay safe. See you
Thank you.
again sometime.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.